Hello everybody, it is Mr. Cooper here. I hope you're well and happy Thursday. Today I am dressed in green. I'm looking a bit more casual than normal because our children and us, the Academy have been raising awareness for mental health. Wellbeing and mental health and looking after our minds as much as our bodies is always a priority here at the Academy. Student wellbeing has been a part of our curriculum for a long period of time. I just want to talk to you very quickly about what we do at the Academy to help support student wellbeing and of course give you a few top tips of how you can encourage that at home as well. So first of all, obviously we have our wellbeing times where children do enrichment activities to really develop the skills of how they can look after themselves, both mentally and physically. So of course, at the moment, our children are sat down quite a lot, unable to go outside due to the temperature and social distancing rules. But we do get the children up, so we have wake-up, shake-ups where in between lessons where children will get up, move their body and get active to really support that link between physical health, which of course it heavily impacts on your mental health as well. And of course we do kind of mindfulness exercises, and we have our chair yoga and these type of things that our students really enjoy, and it's a good it gets the children into good practice of learning and then pausing for a while just to reflect, just to pause for a second before they move on to the next lessons, because the children have a very busy day going from lesson to lesson, 6 lessons a day, and it's very hectic, but it's always good to spend those 5 or 10 minutes just to pause. And of course, when our mental health gets a little bit, things get on top of us more, occasionally, it can be challenging, and you need some extra support. We have our on-site student counsellors who are there to support us. One of the key new developments as well that this academic year is we have introduced or redeveloped our worry boxes, which were previously just in the classroom in small containers, but they were not very obvious. They were kind of forgotten about occasionally, and the students didn't always remember that if they were worried that was an option. We have now installed worry boxes in each zone, which are big red post boxes on the walls, and graphics are being pasted around that talk about and advertise these worry boxes. And then the idea is when the students are feeling worried, they can drop a piece of paper into that post box and share their worry. And sometimes just by the act of doing that and releasing that worry and handing it over to the post box does actually give you a bit of relief. But more importantly, our student counsellors will be monitoring these boxes on a daily basis. And if they find that somebody has popped a worry box in, the student counsellors can then work with the teacher and that student to help work them through that worry, whether it be a friendship issue, an academic issue, maybe something's worrying them from home, and that allows any student at any time to be able to express that they have something that they're concerned about, which should hopefully impact on positively on their mental health. And so it's really important that we encourage that kind of positive monitoring of your mental health at home, and particularly for our students, it's all part of the learning process of how can we look after ourselves, not just physically by exercising, but also making sure that we have a positive and healthy mind. And so in my blog this week, in the newsletter, I shared some top tips. So I'm just going to quickly go through them, but if you want a bit more detail, then go and check out the newsletter. First of all, it's always important that when we're praising children, we're praising them for the right reason. So it's very, very easy when a child gets 10 out of 10 on a test to praise them for that score, getting 100% or doing exceptionally well. The difficulty is when we're praising children on the outcome, when and inevitably they don't get that high score because they're being challenged and pushed, and everyone has times when they find things more difficult, then that has a negative impact because then they fear that they're not going to get that positive reinforcement, but they also potentially feel that they might get in trouble for not getting that 100%. Instead, what I would encourage you to do, and our teachers do this in school, is praise the children for the effort that they've put in. So if they can see a child is working exceptionally hard, they're focused, they're dedicated to their learning, even if that means they get 5 out of 10 on the assessment, that still means that they're being praised for their effort. We can't always get everything right all the time, but what we can always do is focus and dedicate ourselves to our learning. And so it's really good to get into the habit of trying to praise children for the effort and the process rather than the outcome. And that's really key. And equally, we have some children, are very gifted and they don't necessarily have to work very hard in order to get 100%. And if we're praising them for the 100%, but not necessarily working very hard, then again, when they do get something that's a bit more challenging, they probably won't have the skills to overcome that. And so it's, reinforce the idea of praising the process, not necessarily the outcome. I would also encourage you to talk about your emotions as well. So really make sure that when you're talking about your emotions as a parent, you're sharing that with your children, and the children then can also share their emotions with you. So everybody has a bad day, everybody has good days, and it's important to describe how you're feeling at that moment in time. Children sometimes have emotions, they're not really sure why they're feeling that way, but it's important to acknowledge that that's just how they're feeling, and then you can have a conversation about how you can overcome that. Everybody wakes up and feels a bit grumpy occasionally, everybody wakes up, feels tired, a bit drained, maybe a bit upset about something, and it's important to just acknowledge that to somebody else and say, I'm feeling a bit down today actually, I'm not really sure why. And just by voicing that actually sometimes makes you feel better, but also the people around you and around the child can really support each other to really overcome those emotions. And it's really important to not fear the fact that you can say, actually, I'm feeling a bit upset. I think particularly boys, we always are meant to feel like we're strong and resilient and this type of thing, but actually sometimes it's okay to admit when you're feeling a bit down or you're struggling. And that's really important to develop those conversations at home. Making decisions. As adults, we have to make millions of decisions every single day. A lot of those decisions can weigh you down, and you can feel the weight of all those things, even if it's a matter of all those little jobs you have to do when you get home. And for children, it's really important we develop those skills so that when they become adults and they have all these responsibilities, they know how to manage them. So it's about making priorities. So when children have homework, it's talking about, right, when are you going to do your homework and when are you going to play? And allow them to make those decisions so that they're managing their time and being kind of organised with themselves so that they get into the habit of doing that. And by the time they're adults then, when they have all these jobs to do, washing and all this type of thing, then they've got the skills to really approach all those things, which doesn't weigh them down, and allowing them to prioritise what's important and what perhaps is less important. And the final thing is trying to develop coping activities. So I think the idea of mental health is it's to acknowledge that you're not always going to have positive mental health. There are times in your life when you go through grief. There are times of your life when you go through stress and anxiety. Everybody feels that. And it's important that you have coping mechanisms of when you do feel those emotions, what do you do? So when you are feeling anxious about something, sometimes it's really useful to break those things down into bits. What is it that you're actually anxious about? What is it that you're worried might happen? And as you talk through that, you can actually break it down and release some of that anxiety, because a lot of it is out of your control. Potentially you can actually do something about other parts of it, so that really it's left with a really small worry. Sometimes if you don't go through that process, it can feel much more heavy and much more on your conscience than actually is needed. Likewise, how do you cope when you're feeling sad? How do you cope when you're feeling upset? What comforts you? Who do you need to speak to? Who can help you? And so by allowing children to develop those coping mechanisms for when they're feeling these feelings, you allow people to overcome those times when you're feeling a little bit down, and like I say, your mental health isn't necessarily where you want it to be. And I think we can all learn that as adults as well. It's something that I try and utilise with me and my family, and it's really important for our children to start to develop those skills now. We live in an exceptionally busy world. Social media sets a lot of unrealistic expectations of the way our lives should be, and it's really important that we have that realism and we have those skills behind us to really ensure that we look after our bodies and our minds. So that's my messages for this week. Hopefully I've given you a bit of a taste of what we do in school to support mental health and well-being, student well-being, and hopefully I've given you a few ideas of what you can do at home to encourage that as well. Have a really great weekend. Make sure you relax, make sure you look after your mental health, and we will see you all again next week for the final week of this half term. Have a really great weekend, everybody.